Benjamin is the dad of the child. So, Evelyn, you're no longer needed.
I'm sorry, Evelyn. That's how it is. Can we get a divorce? What are these people talking about? My mind went blank as my sister Emily piled on. You're an infertile loser. I got pregnant right away.
Finally, we can show Mom a grandchild.
Benjamin was chatting happily with Emily. I let my anger take over and spoke up.
I hate to say it, but that child.
I stopped mid-sentence, thinking. Should I ask them now? Is that child really his? They probably wouldn't deny it. But I don't know the truth. In that case, I should choose the path that drags them into hell regardless of the truth. It would be much more satisfying to reveal the truth one step at a time after things have already gone too far. If there's a reality from which they can't escape no matter how much they regret it, then Benjamin, Emily, and even Mil Abigail would have no choice but to fall into hell. I struggled to hold back my laughter. My name is Evelyn. I'm 27 years old, and I work as a preschool teacher at a local childcare center. Also, 3 years ago, I was lucky enough to meet and marry a wonderful man. My husband's name is Benjamin, and he works for a trading company affiliated with a large corporation. So, there's almost no worry about the company going bankrupt, and as long as he doesn't cause any major problems, he's secure. But that doesn't mean my life has been smooth sailing. I've had my share of struggles. When I was young, my sister Emily took advantage of me, and now my Mil Abigail pushes all the household chores onto me every day. I wonder if I would become stronger if I became a mom myself. I muttered to myself as I watched the children playing at the childcare center. The reason I think like this is because having a child is a big concern for me. Of course, I'm not talking about the children at the childcare center. I'm talking about having a child with Benjamin. We got married 3 years ago. Benjamin is 3 years older than me, but we were both in our 20s. Since we were young, I thought that once we got married, we would quickly be blessed with a child. Apparently, Abigail thought the same. When we got married, Abigail said to me, "Evelyn, you're a preschool teacher, right? So you must love children?"
Yes. I became a preschool teacher because I love children.
Family meetings can be nerve-wracking. But Abigail spoke to me in a friendly manner. That made it easy for me to talk with her. However, there was one thing that bothered me.
Then, you'll have a child right away.
Yes, that would be nice.
Oh? Don't you want to have children?
Her expression changed. I hurriedly tried to smooth things over.
No, I do want children, but it's more about timing. Timing? Is that so? You just need to put in the effort.
She looked at me intently. I felt tense. What should I say in moments like this? While I was pondering, Benjamin interrupted.
Mom, you're putting pressure on her. Don't say things like that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Abigail laughed loudly. But her eyes weren't laughing. This incident made me afraid of her. But I couldn't let her know I was scared. So, in front of her, I always put on a strange, forced smile. I just have to endure while we're at the in-laws' house. Every time I went to her place, I reminded myself of this. Eventually, we set a date for our wedding. And then came the day we were deciding on our new home. Benjamin received a call from her. She wanted us to come over because she had something to discuss. It happened to be a day off, so we both visited the in-laws' house.
Benjamin, Evelyn, I've been waiting for you. Come in.
Thank you for having us. Abigail ushered us in. She guided Benjamin and me to the living room. As we entered the living room, I made eye contact with my silent Fael, Elijah. I instinctively greeted him.
Excuse me for intruding. Sorry to call you over. Abigail was insistent.
I smiled awkwardly and bowed my head. Soon, Abigail returned with coffee. She sat down across from us and declared,
Once you're married, the two of you will live with us. Live together?
I looked at Benjamin in a panic. Benjamin seemed just as surprised. It seemed he didn't know either. I looked at Elijah.
No, I didn't want to intrude on the newlyweds, so I was against it.
What are you talking about?
To have children quickly.
Was she about to say to monitor us? Abigail covered her mouth with a wry smile. But all jokes aside, living together was out of the question. If we lived together, I would have to be scared of her every day. The stress would build up, and I couldn't imagine being able to have children. I looked at Benjamin, hoping he would oppose it.
That sounds good. If we live together, we won't need to pay rent. Benjamin, are you in favor of this? What? Is there something wrong with living together? Are you afraid of getting caught because you're having an affair or something?
Benjamin and Abigail looked at me. I hurriedly denied it.
No, it's just that living together might be inconvenient.
Being a child care worker requires a lot of physical strength. Sometimes I even cut corners on housework to make time. If we lived together, I'm sure I would end up being a burden to Abigail and Elijah. I carefully explained this situation. But Abigail just frowned.
In that case, it would be even better if you lived together.
I can do the housework for you. I regretted saying anything. But it was too late. Abigail quickly persuaded Benjamin, and we ended up living together. I was sure I'd be used as a housekeeper. Once we started living together, things turned out just as I had feared. At first, Abigail helped with the housework, but gradually, tasks like laundry and cleaning became my responsibility. Before I knew it, I was doing all the housework. I tried talking to Abigail, saying I couldn't handle any more. Then she retorted,
What? Are you planning to do nothing as a wife? It's not that. Then at least have a child.
She glared at me sternly. I could only remain silent. In the end, I was just being used by her. My life started to resemble that of a housekeeper. Feeling that this situation was unsustainable, I sought help from Benjamin.
Benjamin, I'd like your mom to help with the housework. Huh? Isn't Mom doing the housework now? She said so when we talked about living together.
She did say that. But she only said it. In reality, she left everything to me and barely did any housework.
You see her lying in front of the TV on her days off, don't you? She needs to rest sometimes, too. You can't complain about that.
He didn't seem to understand at all. Even if I kept talking, it would be no use. Was there any good solution? If things continued like this, it would be just like living at my parents' home. I shuddered, remembering my past life. Right now, we were living with Elijah, Abigail, and Benjamin. Before I moved out for work, I lived with my dad and Emily. My current life was very similar to that time. I was like a substitute for my mom. In other words, taking care of Dad and Emily was my job. Laundry, cleaning, everything was my responsibility. However, on weekends, Dad would sometimes help with chores like cleaning. So, in a way, it was a bit better than now, but that's not the main issue. What truly makes me shudder with fear is how much Emily and Abigail resemble each other. In our current situation, Abigail controls everything. She has the final say in all matters. Elijah sometimes tries to stop her, but he often can't stand up to her. This was evident when he was persuaded during the discussion about living together. Essentially, in my in-laws' house, she wields overwhelming authority. Similarly, Emily held significant power in our parents' home. And she was worse than Abigail. My mom passed away when I was very young. Because of that, Emily grew up spoiled. For instance, if Dad bought me something, Emily would always say,
"Why does Evelyn always get things? It's not like I'm the only one."
I would reply,
"Liar. You got something just the other day."
She would stomp her feet. If it was at home, that was one thing. But Emily would throw tantrums in public places too. On the street, in stores, anywhere. She had to be the center of attention. Even if I received a bit of kindness, she would get angry. Maybe if Dad had disciplined her when she was younger, things might have been different. But Dad thought her behavior stemmed from missing Mom, so he gave in to her demands. This only made her more spoiled. By the time she was in middle school, she was uncontrollable. Whenever I tried to correct her, Emily would pout and say,
"What, are you jealous because you're plain and I'm beautiful?" "That's not it."
I would respond,
Sure. It's easy to say anything, isn't it, you useless girl?"
Emily would smirk at me. She was indeed pretty, had many friends, and enjoyed school life far more than I did. But being called a useless girl just because of that was infuriating. Still, if I tried to argue, Emily would always outtalk me. I just can't win verbally. Even though my grades were better. She was more articulate. She always had the last word. So, I could only endure her complaints in silence. As time went by, Emily became the queen of our household. Maybe Dad and I were also to blame for not stopping her. Emily became the queen of our home. There was only one thing I could do. As soon as I graduated from high school, I left home. If I wasn't there, she couldn't bother me. Dad supported my decision. And with his help, I started living on my own. Living alone was a comfort. No need to worry about Emily. That was the best part. After a while, I graduated from college and became a childcare worker. But then, I had to face her again. One day at work, the director of the childcare center called me. Apparently, there was a visitor. Thinking it might be a parent, I went to the reception room. And there, waiting, was Emily.
"Emily, why are you here?"
"Oh, Evelyn.
I need a favor." "A favor? You came all the way to my workplace for that?"
I snapped at her, annoyed. Emily frowned and leaned in to whisper in my ear.
"Hey, lend me some money." "What? Why should I?" "Are you refusing?" "That's fine, but I can make sure you don't work here anymore."
She smirked. I was terrified. I could tolerate her doing something to me. But if she targeted the children, it would be disastrous.
"How much?" "Let's say $500 for now."
Reluctantly, I gave her the money. She left happily with the cash. I sighed deeply as I watched her leave. After that, Emily visited my workplace numerous times. Each time demanding money. I couldn't take it anymore, so I told Dad about it. From that day on, she stopped showing up. When I asked Dad about it, he said,
"I've spoiled her too much. It's time for her to start working."
He had sternly scolded her. Moreover,
"If you don't get a job, I'll kick you out of the house,"
he told her. Dad went as far as to say that. Apparently, this threat worked. Emily started a part-time job the next day. She also made new friends at work and stopped coming to me. Thus, I was finally freed from her. But it was only for a short while. Now I was being used by Abigail. I wonder if things will change if I have a child. I was thinking about that when I came home from work and heard laughter coming from the in-laws' house. I thought maybe we had guests and entered the house. Then I heard a familiar voice.
I'm working part-time at Benjamin's company now.
It was Emily's voice. I hurried to the living room.
Emily! Evelyn, welcome back.
Emily was waving and smiling. I felt a chill run down my spine.
What are you doing here?
Huh?
I just came to say hi.
She puffed her cheeks. That gesture irritated me, but Benjamin interrupted.
Emily is working part-time at my company now. Part-time? At a trading company?
I felt something was off. But Benjamin continued calmly.
Yeah, we're working on a new project together. So I brought her over.
Benjamin was explaining earnestly. But none of it was sinking in. Knowing Emily, she was definitely up to something. An indescribable sense of unease filled my entire body. However, her visits weren't all bad. For some reason, Abigail's mood improved. She stopped nagging me about having children every day. And when I came home, she had already taken care of the housework.
Thank you, Abigail. It's nothing. I have plenty of free time anyway.
Then why didn't you do it before? Unspoken words floated through my mind. Nevertheless, with a bit of stress relieved, I could finally take a breather. One day, when I returned home from work, Emily was at the house again.
Emily, you're here again?
Yeah, I have something to tell you, Evelyn. Emily was smiling strangely. Could it be about marriage? I wondered as I quickly changed clothes and sat in front of Emily. So, what's the news?
Actually, I'm pregnant. What? Really? Congratulations.
Emily had always been a cheater. She switched boyfriends one after another. So, I always thought there would be trouble. But now, she was smiling while delivering this news. I felt relieved and happy. But the next moment, Abigail said something unexpected.
So, you're no longer needed. What? No longer needed?
I asked, and Emily answered instead.
The baby's dad is Benjamin. So, Evelyn, you're no longer needed.
I'm sorry, Evelyn.
But I need you to leave.
What are they even saying? As I struggled to process this, she kept on.
You infertile failure.
I got pregnant right away.
Finally, Mom will have a grandchild.
They talked happily together. Fueled by anger, I opened my mouth.
Hard to say, but that child.
I stopped to think. Should I ask them now? Is the child really his? They probably won't deny it. But what's the truth? Maybe I should let them fall into their own trap first, then expose everything. Once things are beyond repair, unveiling the truth will be far more entertaining. If they face a harsh reality from which they can't escape, Benjamin, Emily, and Abigail will all be doomed. I stifled a rising laugh. Benjamin asked me,
What about the child?
Do you have something to say?
No matter what, Evelyn, you've lost. Get out.
Emily laughed. I took a deep breath and stood up.
Right, if that child is truly yours, my presence is pointless.
I emphasized slightly. Benjamin's face instantly showed doubt.
What's that supposed to mean? Are you doubting it?
Yes.
We've been married for 3 years, and you couldn't have a child with me? So what? The problem is you.
Benjamin raised his voice. I stayed calm and responded.
Did you forget our tests? Neither of us had any issues. It's not just that. There are other factors, like your health management.
We both had our struggles. But he wouldn't accept that logic now. I gave a forced smile and looked between Benjamin and Emily.
At least we know the child is Emily's. But who's the dad?
Emily is a cheater, after all.
What are you saying?
Emily's face stiffened. She probably had something in mind. I smirked and turned to Benjamin.
Even if you're not the dad, it's fine, right? You have other girlfriends. What are you talking about?
Benjamin's face also stiffened. Looks like I hit the mark. If you have nothing to worry about, that's fine. But, can you handle things as they are?
Shut up. You complaining won't change anything. You can't split us up.
Benjamin slammed the table hard. I averted my gaze and muttered softly.
I understand you want a divorce.
I'll consider it.
What? Are you refusing? We'll take it to court if we have to. Go ahead. I'll have my lawyer ready.
Benjamin clicked his tongue at my words. Noticing this, I turned my back on them. At that moment, Emily quickly stood up and stepped in front of me.
Acting all high and mighty after being dumped, Evelyn. Is that so?
You're unusually confident today.
You should stay quiet like always.
She looked down on me and laughed. Maybe the old me would have faltered here. But now, I had the resolve to get revenge. So, I wasn't scared at all.
You better be prepared. This time, I won't forgive you. Then leave quietly, loser. You don't have to tell me. I'm leaving.
With that, I stormed out of the living room. I returned to my room and packed a few belongings. After briefly saying goodbye to Elijah, I left the in-laws' house. I headed straight back to my parents' home. There, I told Dad about Emily. He seemed at a loss for words. Thus, I began living at my parents' home. Later, I called Ella, who had a child enrolled in the childcare center where I worked. Ella was a lawyer with significant experience in divorce cases. So, can you step in and help?
Of course, Evelyn. You've always taken care of us.
Thank you. What should I do now? I asked for advice. Ella also proceeded with the matter. She gave me various pieces of advice.
Then, I'll take care of the rest. Thank you very much.
I hung up the phone. Now, I could leave everything to Ella. Finally, I could take a deep breath. As soon as I did, a wave of frustration washed over me, and I found myself crying. No, I can't cry yet. Not until my revenge is complete. I quietly wiped away my tears. From that point on, my days were a whirlwind. I exchanged detailed messages with Ella and prepared everything meticulously. At the same time, I kept rejecting Benjamin's demands. His demands were all about negotiating compensation for the divorce. I signed the divorce papers because I needed him to remarry. As expected, right after I signed the divorce papers, Benjamin and Emily obtained their marriage certificate. Despite this, I refused to discuss compensation until everything was ready. I waited for that day to come. Eventually, Emily gave birth. It was a cute baby girl. Needless to say, I was delighted for other reasons. Now, everything is in place.
This is the beginning of the end.
I whispered to myself as I prepared a congratulatory gift. A few days later, I contacted Benjamin to arrange a meeting. His response was filled with joy. He probably thought the divorce compensation negotiations were finally moving forward. Of course, I planned to discuss the compensation. But I had another conversation in mind as well. With a malicious smile, I headed to the in-laws' house with Ella.
Long time no see, Abigail. What are you here for? I thought I told you, you're not needed anymore. I'm here to discuss the divorce compensation. And I also brought a gift for the baby.
I had no obligation to celebrate. I just needed an excuse to come here. So I brought a gift. I pulled the gift out of my bag.
Fine, come in.
She led us into the house. With a sly smile, Ella and I entered the in-laws' house.
Long time no see, Benjamin, Emily.
As I called out, Emily, who was holding the baby, turned around sharply.
What are you doing here? I brought a gift for the baby. Give it to me.
She reached out her hand. I sighed and handed over the gift. Then, we began discussing the divorce compensation. Thanks to Ella's presence, the conversation proceeded smoothly.
Is this acceptable for you? Yes, that amount is fine. I'll pay it. Please bring it to the law office. I will hand it over to Evelyn.
Ella explained calmly. I then opened my mouth to speak.
Since the discussion with Benjamin is over, now it's Emily's turn. What? Why me? Because you're Benjamin's affair partner, right? Or is it that the child isn't Benjamin's?
I said provocatively. Emily's face twisted.
The child is Benjamin's. I have proof.
Weren't you seeing a lot of people?
Don't say such rude things. It's only him now.
Emily raised her voice, but that was simultaneously an admission of her infidelity. That alone was sufficient evidence for me. However, I wanted concrete proof.
For now, show me the proof that the child is Benjamin's. Here it is. The DNA test results.
Benjamin handed over the test results from the side. It was a DNA test report. Apparently, they had done a proper DNA test with a legitimate institution. The result clearly stated that the child was Benjamin and Emily's.
How about that? Now it's clear, right? You were suspicious, but too bad. Well, congratulations. Good for you. Now it's clear that you were the cause of our infertility.
Assuming I was the cause of our infertility based on these results was short-sighted.
Anyway, this makes solid evidence. Solid evidence? What do you mean? I mean, solid evidence that you and Emily were having an affair.
Since they were having an affair, they had a child together. There's no stronger evidence of infidelity. Also, by calculating the child's birth date backward, it's clear the affair happened during our marriage.
Emily, you can't make any more excuses. I'm going to demand settlement money from you. What? What do you mean?
Emily was dumbfounded. The reason for my divorce was his infidelity. Additionally, Benjamin had declared that Emily was his affair partner. Emily, however, had a chance to make excuses. She could have claimed that she wasn't actually having an affair with Benjamin and was merely helping him out of a favor. If she had said that, she might have been able to talk her way out of this situation. Of course, if I had presented objective evidence, it would be different. But finding evidence of an affair after it's discovered is quite difficult. It's almost impossible to obtain proof of infidelity like a detective. So, even if I demanded settlement money from Emily, she might have been able to escape. That is, unless Benjamin wasn't the father of Emily's child. However, Benjamin was indeed the father of Emily's child. This meant Emily could no longer make excuses.
So, I'm going to demand a hefty settlement from you. You tricked me, pretending to doubt who the father was. You misunderstood on your own, didn't you? Besides, it's your fault for cheating.
She crumbled at my words. Watching her fall apart was satisfying. Thus, I successfully took revenge on Emily. However, there were people who felt discomfort at my actions. They were Benjamin and Abigail. They suddenly became sullen and tried to send us away.
If you're done, get out. That's right, you're disturbing our family time.
Despite their words, I couldn't leave yet. I still had things to do.
Sorry, but the conversation isn't over yet. Not over? Are you still trying to extort money?
Benjamin raised his voice. I replied politely, knowing that wasn't the case.
I need to talk to Elijah.
Dad? Benjamin was stunned. At that moment, Elijah came home. It seemed he had gone shopping in place of Abigail and Emily. As soon as he saw me, Elijah greeted me with a smile.
Evelyn, you're here. What brings you today? I'm here for the baby celebration, the divorce settlement discussions, and to bring you the results of a behavior investigation.
At my signal, Ella pulled a large envelope from her bag. She took out several reports and colorful photographs and spread them out on the table.
We conducted an investigation into Emily's behavior and happened to capture some photos of Abigail as well.
I pointed to one of the photos on the table. At that moment, Abigail cried out.
Wait, stop!
Abigail tried to cover the photos. Let's see here. These are well taken. And who is this man?
Well, he just asked me for directions.
Abigail responded nervously. With a sigh, I answered for her.
This person is a student at a nearby university. This person works at a supermarket.
I picked up each photo one by one and explained them to Elijah. There were about 30 photos in total. In all of them, she was with different men.
It seems she has been having affairs with many men. If you decide to divorce, she can help you,
I said, indicating Ella. Elijah nodded and responded.
I see, I'll consider it. Honey, this is...
Abigail desperately started to make excuses. But Elijah silenced her with a stern look.
Be quiet. We'll discuss this matter later. Okay.
She was on the verge of tears, looking dejected. Finding her expression amusing, I couldn't help but laugh.
That's enough. Come on, leave now.
Feeling uncomfortable, Benjamin began urging us to leave. But there was still one more thing I wanted to do.
Just a little more to discuss. Enough already! Stop ruining our lives!
Emily forcefully stood me up and began pushing me towards the door.
But wait. Shut up. You're in the way. If you stay any longer, I'll call the police.
Her words silenced me. I looked at Ella.
It can't be helped. We're done here,
Ella said. Nodding, I headed for the entrance. At that moment, the doorbell rang.
Who is it?
Benjamin asked, opening the door. A tall man stood there.
Excuse me, my wife. Wife? Did you remarry behind my back?
Benjamin pressed me. I calmly pushed Benjamin away.
No, it's Ella's husband.
The man at the door was Ella's husband, Lucas. I had met Lucas several times at the child care center, so I knew him. As we were discussing this, Emily appeared.
Get out of here!
Just as Emily shouted. She tried to escape deeper into the house. I caught her and said, "At least say hello."
He's your affair partner and your current main boyfriend, right? What? Your current main boyfriend?
Benjamin was stunned. Ignoring his reaction, I continued. You two always seem close.
Of course, you knew you were being noticed, right? What? What are you talking about? I don't understand.
Emily played dumb. This was the reason she was trying to kick me out. Here's the situation. Emily told me she had Benjamin's child. At that point, she thought I wouldn't investigate any further. Of course, just saying she had a child would be enough evidence without needing further investigation. But contrary to her expectations, I had conducted an investigation into Emily's behavior. The moment I spread the photos on the table, Emily must have realized that. She must have thought, Maybe my ongoing affair has been discovered. However, the photos on the table were all evidence of Abigail's infidelity. So Emily thought, if I quickly kick her out, I can hide my affair.
That's why you tried to force me to leave the house, right?
I asked Emily. She turned her face away and clenched her teeth. Benjamin grabbed Emily by the shoulders and questioned her loudly.
Emily, have you been cheating on me? No, I'm not cheating,
she replied in a small voice. Benjamin, irritated, pressed further.
Speak clearly. What's going on? It wasn't just an affair, it was serious. It was Benjamin who was having an affair.
I answered in her place, and Emily broke down in tears on the spot. Meanwhile, Benjamin stood there in shock. I decided to add fuel to the fire for these two, as part of my ongoing revenge.
Well, it seems he was just playing around with Emily. Why don't you try to reconcile with Benjamin again? Don't joke with me. I refuse. Don't think you can get away with this.
Who are you to talk? I'm sure many people thought the same. I almost burst out laughing myself. Behind me, Ella calmly and quietly told Lucas.
That's why I have evidence of your infidelity. Be prepared to pay a lot of compensation in the divorce.
Lucas broke down in tears at the entrance of the in-laws' house. If you're going to cry, you shouldn't have cheated. That was the lesson learned from this incident. In any case, I managed to expose everything on both sides. Now, it was up to the people involved to handle the rest. Smiling, I left the in-laws' house. After that, Elijah and Abigail got divorced due to Abigail's infidelity. Elijah ruthlessly kicked her out. With nowhere to go, she rented a small nearby apartment. However, she had very little money to spend freely because she had to pay for the compensation ordered in the divorce settlement. She had to work to support herself. She reluctantly started a part-time job. But having been a housewife for so long, she struggled with the work. She was scolded daily by younger employees and felt both physically and mentally exhausted. Meanwhile, Benjamin and Emily also decided to divorce quickly. The cause of the divorce was clearly Emily's infidelity. But their situation was not straightforward. However, the issue was child custody. They were fighting over who would take custody of the child. To clarify, neither of them wanted custody. They were fighting to push the responsibility onto the other. Naturally, it wasn't easily resolved. In the midst of the ongoing dispute, Emily pulled out the results of a private investigation into Benjamin's conduct. It turned out Benjamin had continued his affairs with other partners I had pointed out, even after marrying Emily. Emily argued that Benjamin should take custody of the child since the divorce was his fault. In the end, they continued to accuse each other of being the cause of the divorce due to infidelity. Meanwhile, as court costs piled up, Benjamin was spending most of his salary on the case. Having been kicked out of the in-laws' house, he couldn't afford to live alone. Eventually, he moved into Abigail's apartment, and the two of them lived together, constantly fighting. On the other hand, Emily also had to earn money to cover court costs. After marrying Benjamin, Emily had quit her part-time job. She didn't have any significant savings either. Naturally, she quickly ran out of funds. She turned to her father for help, but her father, angry over my situation, refused to help her. Abandoned by her father, Emily chose to work at a strip club. She seemed busy with court and childcare during the day and work at night, but that was no concern of mine. Incidentally, I heard that Ella's divorce was finalized too. With the evidence, Lucas quickly agreed to the divorce. Knowing this, I felt a bit regretful, thinking my request caused Ella's divorce. But Ella had already suspected Lucas's infidelity and considered my request a good opportunity. If that were true, I needn't worry about it. As for me, I'm still working hard as a child care worker. The divorce was undoubtedly a shock. But being with children brings a certain kind of healing. Regardless, I vented my frustrations to Ella when she came to pick up her child.
I still don't feel at peace, but how about you, Ella? Well, I knew about the infidelity and was ready for the divorce,
Ella said with a smile. Despite her words, she looked a bit lonely.
Ella, you're strong. As for me, I don't think I want to get married again. Really? Someone at our firm said you were lovely, Evelyn. Really?
I leaned forward eagerly. She laughed at my reaction. With this pace, my remarriage might not be a distant prospect after all. On my birthday, which was also our 15th wedding anniversary, my husband Robert came home with his mistress Kelly and their secret child Alice.
I want to divorce you and live together with Kelly and Alice. I've already lived with you for 15 years, that's long enough,
he declared, expressing his desire to cherish his mistress and their hidden daughter from now on. I was so shocked by this sudden turn of events that I couldn't gather my thoughts. Above all, I thought it was the worst that Robert didn't even seem the least bit remorseful about having an affair. The other woman was also brazenly fantasizing about living in this house as if it was her own.
When I live here, I'm going to buy that sofa the famous actress recommended,
she exclaimed as the carefree conversation progressed on its own, until it was stopped by my daughter Rebecca.
What are you talking about?
She demanded, her single sentence bringing Robert and Kelly's chatter to an abrupt halt. And with the next words Rebecca uttered, the situation began to change. My name is Sarah, and I'm currently a 40-year-old housewife. My husband Robert is the picture of perfection. He's found success in his work as an education commentator, earning an annual salary of $200,000, and he devotedly engages in childcare as a father on his days off. He always greets the neighbors, and whenever I go grocery shopping at the supermarket, people tell me how envious they are of me.
The neighbors told me again today how jealous they are. Someone saw you cleaning up the signboard that blew over in the wind this morning and thanked you, saying it was a big help, I mentioned.
Wow, someone saw me? Well, contributing to the community you live in is only natural. Robert takes the initiative in contributing to the local area, and no matter where you look, you can't find a single flaw in him. I felt blessed every day to be married to such a husband. And Rebecca has also inherited her father's intelligence. She receives daily tutoring from her dad and consistently ranks at the top of her class in her high-level high school. Apparently, her dream is to become a lawyer, so she makes it a daily habit to read the news and newspapers. If this news story went to trial, I wonder what kind of verdict would be handed down, she mused, pulling out a law book to investigate.
You're amazing, doing this day after day. If it were me, I'd find the research too much work and put it off, I admitted.
It is a lot of work, but I'm learning so much. Once I figure it out, I'll teach you too, Mom. Both Robert and Rebecca are extremely bright, so as the only average housewife, I felt a bit of impatience at times.
Living with you two sometimes makes me feel inferior, like I have no redeeming qualities. Maybe I should study something too.
Really? I actually think you're more amazing than me, Mom. Rebecca countered, and we passed the days in trivial everyday chatter like that. Then one day, Robert brought this up.
Come to think of it, Sarah's 40th birthday is coming up soon. What should we do this year? I'll go buy a cake.
Oh, then I'll make dinner that night. Robert and Rebecca were suggesting ways to celebrate my birthday.
Thank you, just the thought alone makes me happy.
I expressed my gratitude, getting excited for my birthday. That's when Robert suddenly changed the subject.
Sarah's 40th birthday is one thing, but it's also the day of our 15th wedding anniversary, he pointed out.
Oh wow, 15 years is a milestone anniversary, isn't it? That's right, we had gotten married on my birthday. Since my birthday and our anniversary overlapped every year, he had always prioritized celebrating my birthday. Even though we never celebrated our anniversary, Robert still remembered it.
You remembered.
I choked up with joy from the morning.
Well, look forward to the big day. I'm not good with surprises, but maybe I'll make an effort for you and Rebecca,
he said, which made me so excited for my own birthday. Then a few days later, on my actual birthday, Robert and Rebecca were up preparing from the morning, making dinner and going out to buy a cake. Since it was my birthday, they told me I could go shopping or relax in my room, whatever I wanted to do. It was a rare day where I didn't have to do housework, so I enjoyed shopping until the evening. When Robert arrived home, Rebecca had prepared an extravagant dinner. I bought a few pre-made dishes, but I worked hard on stuff like the potato salad.
Oh, I don't mind at all. I'm just happy you've been preparing this since morning. By the way, where's your dad?
I had thought Robert was helping Rebecca prepare everything, but he was nowhere to be seen. Oh, right after you left this morning, Dad went out to buy a cake. There are plenty of bakeries near our house. And yet, he had been gone since morning without returning until evening, so we started to worry. When I called him, Robert said he would be back soon. There was background noise on the phone, and it sounded like he was in the car.
Oh, Robert, I wonder if he went all the way to a distant shop to buy it for me?
Maybe. Remember when you saw that cake on TV and said it looked delicious? He might have gone to get that one. We eagerly awaited Robert's return with the delicious cake. 30 minutes later, Robert came home carrying a cake box.
Sorry I'm late. I bought Sarah's favorite cake, so put it in the fridge, okay? Now, let's eat the dinner Rebecca prepared first.
Yay! I'm starving, let's dig in. Laughing at their exchange, I took the cake Robert handed me and carried it to the kitchen.
Huh!
Glancing at the cake box, I was surprised. The sticker on the box indicated it was from a shop just a 10-minute walk from our house. I felt a bit embarrassed, having assumed he had driven far in the morning just to buy a cake for me. The cake was likely just a side errand while he was out taking care of other things he wanted to get done on his day off. After finishing our meal and having some cake, Robert cleared his throat and said,
There's something I need to talk to you two about.
Can you wait here a moment? Sure. Rebecca and I exchanged glances, wondering what this could be about.
Wait, maybe it's a surprise gift for your 15th wedding anniversary?
When she said that, I thought she might be right. Rather than cake, he had probably gone out of his way to buy a present. Rebecca nudged my arm with a grin. I'm so jealous. What do you think the present will be?
Knowing Dad, maybe a designer handbag or something?
Rebecca and I waited for Robert with growing anticipation. Then 10 minutes later, Robert returned. As the living room door opened, the eager looks on my and Rebecca's faces changed in an instant.
What?
Behind Robert stood an unfamiliar woman and child. The woman looked to be in her 20s, wearing a miniskirt, and the elementary school-aged child had a flashy hairstyle. Their appearance was so different from our family that I felt a bit unnerved.
Who are these people?
When I asked, Robert revealed a shocking truth.
Actually, this child is mine. What?
Rebecca and I cried out in disbelief. We never imagined he would do something like this, so the shock was tremendous. As I stood there dumbfounded, Robert continued.
Sarah and I have lived together for 15 years now. And Rebecca, you're in high school and almost an adult. You two are proper grown-ups now, right?
Robert started creating a strangely sentimental atmosphere. Still unable to process the situation, my gaze darted back and forth between Robert and the woman half hidden behind him.
But this child is still little and she hasn't been able to live together with us. She's had to sneak around, never going out freely. So for their sake, I want you and Rebecca to move out.
Robert was telling me and Rebecca to leave this precious home we had lived in for so long. This was the house Robert and I had bought together, nervously but excitedly, as newlyweds. He tells me to hand over those memories to his lover. What's more, the reason was that he hadn't spent much time with my mistress and illegitimate child, which was extremely harsh, and the sudden turn of events made me reconsider my thoughts.
Wait a minute. What Robert's saying true? Is that child really yours?
I doubted it was a lie, as the child looked too different from Rebecca.
Yeah, it's true. This child's name is Alice, and unlike Rebecca, she's a very energetic and bright. Right, Kelly?
Yes. I've been hearing from Robert that Rebecca is a quiet and smart girl. So I was happy that Alice has a completely different personality from Rebecca. Kelly looked at me and smiled with a sneer. I felt unpleasant about the conversation between Robert and Kelly. When I thought about how Robert was playing around with this woman while I was doing housework and taking care of Rebecca, I felt sick to my stomach.
Mom, are you okay?
Seeing my face turning pale, Rebecca gently rubbed my back. Usually, Robert would have sensed that I was feeling unwell. But with another woman around, he doesn't seem to care about me at all. He keeps looking at Kelly and Alice.
This is the house we're going to live in from now on. We'll give the sofa and TV to Sarah and Rebecca, so let's buy new ones for us. Yay, I'm so happy. I definitely want the sofa that famous celebrity was recommending.
They were already moving the conversation forward on their own, even though I hadn't said I would give them the house yet. There's no way I'm giving up this house for his mistress.
The conversation is moving forward on its own as if it's already been decided, but I don't want to give up this house. Just get out already.
When I shouted loudly, the room fell silent. Then Robert sighed and spoke to me in an exasperated tone, as if to admonish me.
You know what? This house is standing because of the money I earn, right? So all the authority lies with me. This house is where my family will live from today, so you outsiders need to leave, okay?
The usually kind and gentle Robert spoke in a cruel and terrible way, as if revealing his true nature. Then, with a sneer, he said one last thing.
We're getting divorced today. Sarah, you're 40 years old. It's been 15 years since we got married, so it's a good time. I'll properly pay child support until Rebecca becomes an adult. You can rest assured about that.
Rather, he probably thinks that because he has money, if he says he'll pay, I'll agree. I felt frustrated realizing how much Robert had been looking down on me.
What are you saying?
Amidst all this, Rebecca said that in a calm and low voice.
Huh? What's wrong? Are you sad about being separated from Daddy? Don't worry. Daddy won't forget about you even if we're apart. That's not it. Dad, you can't divorce Mom, you know?
At Rebecca's words, the room was in an uproar. Huh? What's with this kid?
Aren't you just jealous because we're going to be happy? Now, Kelly, calm down. Rebecca, why did you think that?
Robert asked Rebecca that question with a deliberately exaggerated smile. Then, with Rebecca's further words, the situation changed drastically.
Because that's how it normally is.
Huh?
I don't know about that, and aren't you just saying that to threaten me?
Kelly started to get suspicious about what was going on. I don't know the details either, but looking at Rebecca's usual demeanor, I can tell she's not lying. Robert also knows Rebecca well, so he swallowed hard upon hearing those words.
It's been decided that it's impossible for the person who cheated to demand a divorce. That's why Dad can't say he wants to divorce.
As I listened to Rebecca's story, I realized she was right. That might be true. As I said that, Kelly's voice suddenly rose.
Then why don't you guys say you want a divorce? Give Robert to us.
Kelly confronted me like that. Can I trust Robert who cheated on me and rebuild a warm family again? But I also didn't want to give in to Kelly's demands and hand Robert over. As I was at a loss for words, confronted by Kelly, Rebecca came to my aid. So what do you want to do, Dad?
Well, of course I want to live with Kelly and Alice from now on. You're almost an adult, so you'll be fine living with just Sarah, right?
After hearing Robert's opinion, Rebecca calmly stated,
So even if this child causes you to lose your job, you still want to live with them? What?
Everyone present was confused by Rebecca's words. Pointing at Alice, who was hiding behind Kelly, Rebecca continued.
This kid goes to Franklin Elementary School, doesn't she? How do you know that? It's on the way to my high school. I heard that kid is always causing trouble in the nearby park and getting scolded by the police and teachers. Even at my school, there are rumors that the students from that elementary school are rough. Do you really want to make her your daughter, Dad? Even at the cost of your reputation as an education critic? Rebecca declared.
Upon hearing this, Robert whirled around to face Kelly and Alice, demanding,
Is what Rebecca is saying true? Alice, have you been doing those things?
Alice trembled, hiding behind Kelly. Realizing he wasn't getting anywhere, Robert turned to Kelly.
If the police and teachers are involved, the guardians must know too. Kelly, is it true?
Sweating under Robert's intense gaze, Kelly avoided eye contact.
That's just how elementary school kids are. You're making too big a deal out of it.
While she didn't explicitly confirm it, her response was as good as an admission. Robert began to fret. He was likely imagining what life would be like after marrying Kelly and Alice. His reputation as an education critic would suffer, and he'd undoubtedly face backlash. The once supremely confident Robert was gone. Distraught, he seemed to be feeling anxious about the future.
No! Because of this kid, this is the worst.
But Rebecca apparently still had more to say, relentlessly pressing on.
And Mom, doesn't this woman's face look familiar? Huh?
Kelly and I looked at each other, but nothing came to mind. Kelly also seemed clueless.
A month ago, on the way back from shopping in town, there was a woman in a red dress. I remember. We bumped into a woman in a red dress and she yelled at us furiously even though it was both our faults. The cake we bought got smashed too. It was awful, but why bring that up now?
When I asked, Rebecca smirked and pointed at Kelly.
That woman was her, wasn't it?
Hearing this, Kelly began to panic.
Huh? I don't remember something that long ago. And what does that have to do with anything now anyway? Don't try to change the subject.
Kelly was visibly flustered. She must have something she wants to hide. Desperately recalling the details of that day, I shouted the words that would send Kelly to hell.
Oh, right. You were with a man other than Robert at that time. Shut up.
Kelly hurriedly tried to stop me, but it was too late. Upon hearing this, Robert immediately fixed his gaze on Kelly.
What? You were cheating? No, that was just a coincidence. And who are you to talk when you're the one cheating? This is the worst. Why is this happening to me?
Kelly flew into a panic at the sudden revelation. This only seemed to further enrage Robert.
My position is completely different from yours, Kelly. It's not like you can just go around cheating too. And with a kid. How could you? And a month ago, we had already decided to get married, hadn't we?
Robert confronted her aggressively as their argument escalated more and more out of control. Half crazed, they continued their absurd bickering. I was left behind with Rebecca, listening to the two of them arguing incessantly. It had become so ridiculous that I finally decided to intervene.
Oh, enough already. Can we just stop this right here? Robert, you're the last person who should be telling someone not to cheat.
I put an end to their foolish and disgraceful bickering.
You say that we have this life because of you. How dare you use those words? At the very least, the reason you've been able to focus on your work is that I've been maintaining our lifestyle. It's not thanks to just one person, it's thanks to our family. And you call yourself an education critic? What a joke.
I scoffed, throwing sarcastic jabs at Robert.
And Kelly, I'm sorry, but did I stir up some unnecessary memories for you? I'm sure this child isn't related to Robert by blood either. You seem to want to marry a wealthy man, but now that it's turned out like this, I pity you. You have my deepest sympathies.
I mocked Kelly with a disparaging tone. The two of them were beside themselves, their plans having gone completely awry.
Ugh! This is an absolute disaster. Everything is ruined.
Kelly tugged at her hair, unable to hide her frustration, perhaps realizing that she wouldn't be able to marry Robert after all.
What? This is the worst. I was going to marry you and provide for you, but forget it. Get out of here, now.
Robert was just as agitated as Kelly, upset that things hadn't worked out for him either.
You think I'd ever come back to a place like this? Alice, we're leaving.
Kelly had shown up out of nowhere, demanding that I divorce Robert, but of course, it didn't go as smoothly as she'd hoped. To make matters worse, her own affair had been exposed. The moment things turned against her, she tried to run away. My birthday and our 15th wedding anniversary were coming to the most disastrous end imaginable. But I wasn't about to let it end like that. I lightly tapped Kelly on the shoulder as she attempted to flee, and said,
What makes you think you can just leave? You were having an affair with a married man, so I'll be seeking compensation from you. What? That's impossible. I don't have that kind of money. Why don't you just get it from Robert?
Kelly immediately turned around and refused, reacting strongly to the word compensation.
Of course I'll be seeking compensation from Robert too. But you're not family, so the claims will be separate. It's such a shame you won't be able to get married, isn't it?
I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Kelly clenched her fists tightly, trembling with frustration and resentment.
If you try to run, I'll consult my lawyer and we'll take this to court.
When Rebecca said that, Kelly begged for mercy, pleading with us to spare her from legal action. We confirmed where to send the future claims and sent her home for the day. With only our family remaining, the house fell into a deep, uncomfortable silence. Robert stood there, head bowed, shaking. I let out a sigh and said,
Rebecca and I will be staying at my parents' house for a while. Maybe it's time you learned how difficult it is to live on your own for once. It's a good opportunity for you to realize that our lifestyle isn't just thanks to you, Dad.
After firmly stating this to Robert, Rebecca and I immediately began packing our bags.
Wait, I'm sorry. I apologize for the affair. Just please, don't go to your parents.
You're only apologizing because you're worried about appearances. Losing your wife and daughter would be pretty damaging to your career, wouldn't it? When I said that, he fell silent, unable to deny the truth of it.
Well then, I won't come back until you've shown some real remorse.
With that, Rebecca and I left. When we arrived at my parents' house and told them everything, they were shocked. They probably never imagined Robert could be that kind of person. But they believed me right away and welcomed us with open arms. Deep down, my parents must have suspected that there was something shady behind Robert's perfect image. It's been almost a month since we started living with my parents. I went back to our house once to pick up some belongings I'd left behind. The place was in a miserable state. Clothes were strewn all over the place, the mail had piled up, and it seemed Robert had been living on nothing but instant meals. Ignoring the state of the room, I gathered only the necessities and left. As I was locking the front door, I ran into one of our neighbors who hurried over to me. I thought they were coming to express concern about Robert, but that wasn't the case at all. They looked at me with sympathetic eyes, as if to say, "You finally managed to get away from Robert." Apparently, Robert's recent behavior had made it immediately clear that I had left him. It seems that Robert, who used to say he would do anything for the community, like pulling weeds on the road, has suddenly turned cold. And for good reason. It was actually me who fixed the sign that had been blown away by the wind, not Robert. Robert had only found the blown-away sign and ordered me to fix it, saying it was in the way of his commute and an eyesore. The neighbors saw the situation and had complimented Robert, saying he was lucky to have a wife like me. But Robert believed he had done it all himself. From the next day onward, Robert worked me even harder to show off more to the neighbors. They had been worried about me for a long time, but when they noticed that Robert had stopped trying to impress them recently, they realized I must have left.
You were worried about me. Thank you so much. How has Robert been lately?
When I asked, they told me, but he had become a terribly troublesome resident. Robert doesn't keep track of the garbage collection days and apparently throws away trash whenever he feels like it. On days when it's not garbage day, after collection is over, he shamelessly throws it out without a care. Even when warned, Robert responds like this.
Oh, is that so? I'm sorry, I didn't know. I'll be more careful next time.
He puts on a show of reflecting with a smile, but he just leaves the trash he brought and walks away ambiguously. No matter how many times he's told, he gives the same response, so the neighbors are fed up with him. I'm so sorry. My husband has been causing trouble for all of you. When I apologized, the neighbors sympathized, saying it must have been hard for me to live with a husband like that. Robert himself probably still thinks he can have friendly relations with the neighbors. But the reality is completely different. Everyone was handling Robert with caution. I chatted with the neighbors for a bit longer and then went home. When I get back to my parents' house, I'll tell Rebecca about this and we'll laugh together. When Rebecca heard the story, she scoffed and shared a memory about Robert.
Come to think of it, whenever I got good grades on tests, Dad would praise me. But instead of saying, Rebecca, you're amazing, he'd say things like, that's because you're my kid, or it's because I taught you. He was always only thinking about himself.
I couldn't contain my laughter at the thought of Robert being spoken of so harshly by his daughter. I almost felt sorry for him. He's probably like this at work too. He goes on assuming he's the only amazing one, and ends up being avoided by the people around him. As this becomes more and more known to the world, his work will likely decrease. That's what I predicted, and it turned out to be spot on. Robert couldn't handle living alone, so he called other women to the house and had them do housework. He says things to make them happy, like wanting them to be his wife, but in reality, they're just convenient housekeepers. The women called to the house couldn't stand that lifestyle, so they leaked to the tabloids that the education critic who has been getting a lot of attention on TV and in magazines lately actually has a sloppy private life. The article spread in an instant, dealing a huge blow to Robert. He had been careful not to let it slip that he might be getting divorced or that he was having an affair in order to maintain his public image, but a small error in judgment exposed it to the world. His work decreased dramatically in no time. On top of that, people who had worked with Robert in the past started saying that he was actually an arrogant person behind the scenes. If it had been just one person, he could have said it was a baseless lie, but as that person's statement was released, more and more testimonies gathered, and it reached a point where he couldn't make excuses. Robert was completely ostracized from the industry. He's desperately trying to make money in other industries, but since his face and name are well known, he'll probably have zero income for the time being. I scoffed as I thought about my future with Robert. I had thought about taking some distance and giving him another chance if he reflected. But that idea might be too soft. I decided to formally file for divorce and mailed the divorce application to our house. I got a huge number of calls from Robert, but I had decided not to answer no matter what, so I kept ignoring them. He'll probably submit the divorce application while regretting his affair. And he'll likely have the childish idea that he can still start over with Kelly. But such thoughts cannot be allowed. Before that, I made her swear never to see Robert again for the rest of her life, along with a claim for compensation. Kelly will definitely keep that promise. A few days ago, Rebecca and I went to Kelly's house. Kelly was living with her parents, so we told them everything too. Kelly's parents apologized to us profusely. They wrote a sworn statement that they would never let her see him again. In fact, I got a call from Kelly's parents saying that Robert had come to visit, but of course they sent him away without letting him see her. Kelly will probably live under the strict supervision of her parents from now on. She won't be allowed to act freely, and she's sure to spend suffocating and boring days. She'll have an inconvenient life where she's not allowed to meet other men. She'll likely regret having an affair with a married man for the rest of her life. I'll make Kelly and Robert go through hell and reflect properly. And I worked hard to give Rebecca even more enjoyable days than the life she's had so far. When I told her I had vowed to do that, it seemed Rebecca had been thinking the same thing.
When I become a lawyer in the future, I should be able to earn more than Dad, so let's definitely get back at him and live in a nice house.
I laughed at Rebecca's strong, spirited words. I'm counting on you. I thought my life would become more joyful, and I looked forward to the future.
Skirts at funerals are just too revealing. She must be looking for a man.
I'm fed up with my husband Kevin's narrow-minded thinking. Divorce? That's exactly what I want. I'm leaving this house. My name is Kara. At 40, I'm a huge chocolate lover who often ends up eating almost an entire family pack by myself. I remember constantly fighting over it with my sister. Looking back, I wasn't the most mature sister. But I know people who are even less mature. I was 25 back then. Just married to Kevin, a banker. We started dating through a friend's introduction and got married in about 6 months. Everyone envied my seemingly perfect life, but after getting married, the kind Kevin slowly started to change.
Welcome home, you must be tired. What about dinner?
It's ready. Go take a shower, relax and warm up. Kevin expected this routine every time he came home from work. I had to greet him at the door and have dinner ready, or Kevin would get moody. So, I always made sure to leave work earlier than Kevin to prepare dinner and the shower. It was somewhat bothersome, but thanks to Kevin's high salary, We lived in a beautiful house and I had a marriage others envied. I tried not to mind the occasional whims of a husband, thinking it's common in many households. However, Kevin's behavior started to become increasingly absurd. Even after getting married, I often visited my parents on my days off to see my sister, who was now 14 years younger than me. In our house where both parents worked, I think I was the one who mostly raised her. Not because I was forced to, but because I simply loved her and couldn't take my eyes off her. She was very frail. There were times when she was healthy, but also times when she was repeatedly in and out of the hospital, in a critical condition. Thinking that I might suddenly lose her one day. It was natural to have a deeper love for her than for a normal sister. So even after getting married, I kept visiting her when she was absent from school. But Kevin didn't approve of this. Who's more important to you, me or your sister?
A wife should devote herself to her husband after marriage. My mom never did such things. You're failing as a wife.
Kevin would start lecturing me on his beliefs for nearly an hour. Back then, none of my friends were married. So I confided in a coworker about Kevin.
It's your fault. After you get married, you should devote yourself to your husband.
She told me. I wondered if that was just how things were. Looking back, I was naive. But even so, not seeing my sister was never an option for me. Because her health got worse. She was hospitalized again and could only have short visits in a sterile room. Rushing to the hospital whenever possible was the natural thing to do for a family. Sometimes I took time off work, even on Kevin's days off, I would go. But of course, Kevin was vehemently against it. One day, he suddenly brought his mother, Amelia, home and, in front of her.
"What are you thinking?"
He confronted me. He made me stand up straight, ready to lecture.
"What do you mean? I'm taking care of everything at home. What's the problem?"
You really are hopeless.
How many times do I have to tell you about your clothes? A wife wearing skirts is just disgraceful. What's wrong with wearing the clothes I like? Besides, this is the dress my sister chose for me. I can't just give it up. See? It's always about your sister. Who do you think should be your top priority? Who is feeding you? What? I work too. There's no need for you to say you're feeding me. Sigh. This is pointless. Listen, I've already called your workplace and told them you're resigning. Be grateful. From now on, you'll focus on being a housewife. What do you mean? Who gave you the right to do that?
I won't listen to you.
And from today, you'll live with my mom. She'll teach you how to be a proper wife. This is ridiculous. You're insane. Shut up.
In a rage, Kevin smashed a glass on the floor. And not just that, he started throwing anything he could get his hands on. Seeing the shattered glass, I was truly frightened of Kevin for the first time. I regretted marrying such a person. Later, I called my company to cancel the resignation.
We don't want any trouble, so please just leave it as it is.
They said. It seemed Kevin had demanded my resignation in an almost abusive way. And so, I lost my job and became the housewife Kevin wanted. When I reported to him that I had resigned as he wished, Kevin became cheerful.
I guess I went a bit too far.
Sorry. He came apologizing. But after seeing Kevin's true nature, I couldn't trust that smile anymore. The next day, Kevin suddenly brought a bunch of his coworkers home.
I thought I'd show off my wonderful wife.
And his colleagues would say things like,
"Your wife is beautiful, I'm envious."
They kept complimenting. And Kevin added, "My wife is a great cook. You all should try her food." He just blurted out.
Wait. This is too sudden. I don't have enough food for so many people.
It's fine. Just make something simple. I'll even go by the ingredients. A colleague, watching the exchange.
Kara, you are so loved, I'm jealous.
They exclaimed. No, Kevin is just good at keeping up appearances. If he truly cared about his wife, he wouldn't bring colleagues home like nothing happened after our big fight yesterday. While holding back my anger, I prepared the meal with Amelia. After Kevin's colleagues left, having spent about 3 hours at our house, it happened. You know.
What?
I replied anxiously to Kevin's disgruntled tone, fearing another outburst like yesterday's.
Couldn't you be a bit more pleasant? It's like I haven't taught my wife properly.
I wanted to retort, but I didn't dare. I was afraid. I'm sorry.
Even a child can apologize. Mom, rate her performance today.
With that, Kevin turned to Amelia. Well, you didn't quite honor Kevin. I can't give a score for that. It's just not good enough.
Ha! See, Mom knows best. A masterpiece, you're so bad she can't even rate you.
Amelia's words were followed by Kevin playfully slapping my cheek while laughing loudly. Also, about the meal, I tasted a bit, and it didn't seem to suit Kevin's taste.
That's right, Mom. Tell her more. And what about her dress? She exposed her skin even though there were men among the colleagues. What do you think?
A woman's collarbone can excite some men, so she should cover it with a scarf or a high neck. It's indecent otherwise. It was all because of Kevin that his colleagues suddenly showed up at the house, leaving me with no time to change before I had to start cooking. Right? Why am I being criticized so one-sidedly? Really, she doesn't learn, no matter how much I teach her every day.
She must be slow-witted. No doubt. Ha ha ha.
Eventually, I was forced to stand and receive a lecture for nearly 2 hours. By the time I finally got to shower and tried to sleep, it was already 4 a.m. I had to prepare Kevin's lunchbox, so I decided to give up on sleep. Even after that, Kevin's wife training continued as I kept visiting my sister. About a month and a half later, I received the news of my sister's passing. I wished it was a lie, and the first thing I said to my mom, who broke the news, was,
"It's a lie, right?"
I said. I had been warned many times about her precarious condition, and I had just visited her. I thought I was prepared, but my heart couldn't catch up. Just 14 years old. My sister, who had been in and out of the hospital, fighting through painful treatments, did she have a happy life? As her sister, had I managed to bring joy to her life? However, the last expression I saw on my sister's face in the hospital was a smile. She didn't seem to suffer. You tried so hard, rest now, and thank you for everything. With tears streaming down my face, I hugged my sister for the last farewell. The wake and funeral went by in a blur, and it had been a few days since I returned home. I had informed Kevin of my sister's passing, but of course, he didn't attend either the wake or the funeral. Moreover, he had the audacity to say,
"You should prioritize me over someone who has passed away."
Disgusted to hear such foul words at a time like this, I ignored him and hung up the phone. After everything was over and I returned home with a heavy heart. Kevin and Amelia were waiting at the entrance, like demons lying in wait.
"You're back pretty late, aren't you?"
My family has just lost someone. It's not like I could return in 2 or 3 hours.
"You're good at lying, aren't you?" What? What? Are you having a rebellious phase? always making up things and opposing me. Whose wife are you? Wait a minute. My sister has passed away. It's not a lie. Ha, as if. Seeing you in that skirt at the funeral. Not even greeting me when I come home from work for days. That's impossible. Impossible? Why? If you loved your husband, you would. You're a useless wife. Don't tell me you're cheating, are you? What? Always showing skin. Even flirting with my colleagues before. You just like men, that's all. What a shameless woman. What are you talking about? I am.
At that moment, I almost forgot my fear of Kevin and was about to retort out of anger.
Divorce then. That's fine, isn't it? A frivolous woman like you doesn't suit Kevin, right? Mom. I mean, divorce is a bit. Fine, I agree. We'll get a divorce.
I immediately agreed with Amelia's suggestion of divorce. Kevin kept repeating, "Stop the divorce," but I wasn't listening. I had to seize this chance to get away from Kevin. The thought of his rage was too frightening. I was certain now was the time. So, I quickly packed my things and left the house. Until the end, Kevin was like,
"I'll forgive you if you apologize."
But it sounded insane to me, so I ignored it. Still, he persistently grabbed my arm tightly at the end.
Wait.
So I struck his face hard with my bag and ran away. I headed straight to a certain place. A condo room that was prepared for such a scenario. Right as I entered the room, I got a call from Amelia on my mobile phone. "Hello?
Kara? Did you arrive safely?
"Yes. I'm fine. I took a taxi, so Kevin doesn't know."
That's good. Leave the divorce papers to me. I'll make sure he signs them.
"Thank you. I'm looking forward to living with you." Actually, Amelia and I had been pretending to be on bad terms in front of Kevin. It was on the day Kevin brought his colleagues home. After the lecture ended and Kevin fell asleep, Amelia whispered to me,
"Leave this house. Escape from Kevin."
Amelia had been suspicious every time Kevin complained that Kara is hopeless. Apparently, Amelia's late husband was very much like Kevin, and she had suffered a lot. In her time, divorce was considered shameful, and she couldn't get one herself. But she wanted me to have the freedom she didn't. Seeing the interactions between Kevin and me made her think I must help her quickly. So, with the help of her acquaintances, Amelia found a secure property for a woman to live alone. Amelia, Kevin's mother, is incredibly kind, so unlike him that I can't thank her enough. Half a month since I started living in the condo Amelia arranged for me. She arrived with the divorce papers signed by Kevin.
Amelia. Welcome. Ofufu, I'm looking forward to our time together.
Amelia revealed that she realized how Kevin had become only after she started living with us. Until then, he was the good son, showing only his good side to his colleagues. She blamed herself, thinking it might be due to the inheritance from FIL or the environment he grew up in. As for me, even if his childhood was the reason, an adult should be able to control his emotions, so I don't blame Amelia. Currently, Kevin is kind to Amelia because she's on his side. If he knew that she was helping me with the divorce, there's no telling what he might do. That's why, when Amelia arranged this house, "Why don't you stay with me for a while?" I suggested. Amelia hesitated, saying, "I'm just your MIL. We'll be strangers after the divorce. But, after all you've done, there's no such thing as MIL or anything. You're my mom, or a dependable sister." I insisted. I truly feel that way. Even when returning from my sister's funeral, it was Amelia who said, "Let's divorce." She intentionally guided the conversation towards divorce, and I immediately agreed. I thought escaping Kevin would take more preparation and time, but thanks to Amelia, that time came sooner. I'm immensely grateful. I signed the divorce papers Amelia brought and submitted them to the office. Now I'm officially free. But 4 days later, somehow, Kevin found me and was waiting in front of the condo.
I found you. How dare you?
Kevin raised his voice. I wonder if he's found out about that thing. Haha. While thinking this, I kept my cool. What do you want now?
The credit card abuse and the missing account balance are your doing, aren't they?
What are you talking about?
Don't lie.
In truth, before the divorce, I gradually used Kevin's credit card to buy furniture for this house. I also secretly took compensation money from the bank account for the divorce proceedings. This was my idea. I even consulted Amelia, and she said, "Go for it," so I didn't hesitate to empty the balance. Thanks to this compensation, unemployed me and Amelia are living elegantly, even having tea parties every night.
That's my money. You're okay with what you've done?
Your money?
The credit card was made after marriage, and I contributed to the savings too.
It's not yours alone, it's marital property, I said, smiling broadly. Then from behind, "Oh dear, you got found." Amelia returned from shopping.
Ah, welcome back, Amelia.
Behind me, Kevin stood there dumbfounded.
Why is Mom here?
Well, because we're living together. Kevin was puzzled, while Amelia remained calm.
So you lied about going back to your parents' house? But why are you with Kara instead of me? I don't understand.
Kevin, I've abandoned you, Amelia sighed.
What?
I helped Kara escape here.
And by the way, when I brought up the divorce,
Kara and I were already working together.
But, Mom, you were always bad-mouthing Kara. Yes, but all those things I said were actually about you. What do you mean?
You're not the brightest, Kevin, and getting all excited about women's collarbones. I thought Kara was in danger with you. No wife deserves a husband like that. Kevin was stunned by Amelia's words. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but burst out laughing at her response. Mom, I'm your son, right? Yes, and it's such a shame. I should have raised a more decent child.
Wah!
I couldn't hold back and burst into loud laughter. Your behavior is just like Edward's. Watching you, I felt so sorry for Kara, as if she was me. But if Kara wasn't around, you might revert to your old self or even start relying on me. Who knows what you might do? So, I decided to live together with Kara to protect her from you. Kevin's eyes welled up with tears as he listened to Amelia recount the whole story. And when he finally exclaimed,
Is it my fault? Why? Aren't you my parent? That's child neglect.
Even Amelia couldn't help but laugh.
Do I still need to parent a man almost in his 30s, she said.
Our commotion attracted the neighbors.
A shameful person.
Kevin was scoffed. Embarrassed to be seen, Kevin left without raising his hand to us. But after a night's sleep, or perhaps losing his mind, Kevin vented his frustrations to his colleagues who used to drink at our house. She's good on the surface, but neglects her husband. A mother who doesn't care for her child. Two people who squandered money. That was how he portrayed us, trying to gain sympathy. But such husbands are a social issue nowadays, a classic example of what women dislike. One woman told him, While not openly agreeing, the atmosphere clearly indicated Kevin is to blame, making his position at work uncomfortable. Pretending to be tough, but actually fragile as glass. Kevin couldn't withstand the stares and whispers of his colleagues and soon resigned. It's ironic how someone who hurled abuse at me couldn't take it when it was directed at him. Feeling lonely, Kevin sent me a bizarre letter trying to justify his actions and boast about his greatness as a man. A staggering 10 pages long. When I saw the thick envelope, I was terrified. I had blocked his messages, but if he could send handwritten letters this easily. I shuddered to think how many more there might be. I've heard of people clinging on after a divorce, but can't he just let go gracefully? Incidentally, the last line of his letter was,
"If you ever miss me, feel free to get in touch."
So, without hesitation, "Then please proceed with the division of assets," I just replied. Of course, this also led to a lot of disputes. I used to live in fear under the same roof with him, but not anymore. I spoke up boldly and decided to hire a lawyer. In fact, I had been recording Kevin's behavior at home, anticipating a divorce long before Amelia told me to escape. Enduring his harsh words and staying in that house for months was worth it. Thanks to that, I was able to secure a real compensation from the divorce proceedings. And I successfully concluded the division of assets. Afterward, as I started a new job, I moved out of the condo I shared with Amelia. It was actually within commuting distance, but surprisingly, Amelia got a boyfriend. The guy who introduced her to the condo turned out to be her new partner. When her boyfriend came to pick her up, Amelia said,
"Come visit us once we're settled."
They left hand in hand. I was quite taken aback by Amelia's move. Given how kind and capable she is, it's no surprise she's still popular at her age. As for me, I was so focused on my career that I missed the timing for remarriage. Or so I thought, but with the pandemic, we started having frequent online parties at work. This led to more casual exchanges of contacts with people I rarely talked to. And surprisingly, I received an approach from a manager of another department, whom I had never spoken to before. Initially, I kept my distance because we were from the same company. But as we talked about things we couldn't discuss at work online, we grew closer and started dating. The manager, who hadn't been in a relationship for years after his last girlfriend left him for being too career-focused, said,
"I don't want to make the same mistake again."
He treated me very kindly. And happily, we're set to marry next year. I was worried about how his in-laws would react to my divorce history.
"Thank you for taking our son off our hands."
They were surprisingly calm. When I told Amelia about my remarriage, she was delighted. As for Kevin, he found another job at a different bank and remarried. But with his character, he ended up divorcing again. Now at divorce number 3. Being a bank employee with initially polite manners and blaming his past divorces on his wives, he still manages to trap women. Even when Amelia warns his fiancées about his true nature, Kevin skillfully deceives them. But reaching a third divorce probably means he'll start to be shunned by women, and I hope no more victims will emerge. Given the number of women he's wronged, I doubt he'll have a happy ending. Well, it's none of my business anymore.
Ah. Look, it's the bitch.
My 6-year-old daughter pointed at the woman who had come to our house. Today was the day my son brought his fiancée over. I quickly lowered my daughter's pointing hand and bowed repeatedly to the fiancé, embarrassed by the terrible thing my daughter had said to her. Upon hearing this, my daughter looked up at me with pure curiosity and said,
"But, sis was happy being called a bitch."
My name is Trinity. At 31, I'm living my life juggling work and parenting. You could say I'm a working mom. My husband, Michael, is also 31. A kind and justice-driven man, Michael is a well-respected salesman within his company. He's supportive in both childcare and household chores, always taking the initiative without me having to ask. It's truly a blessing, especially when I come home tired from work. Marrying Michael was the best decision of my life. Every day, I'm grateful for my husband, Michael. Our daughter, Yasmin, is 6 years old. Full of growth and energy, Yasmin's curiosity knows no bounds. Every day she discovers something new and excitedly shouts,
"Mom, look!"
enjoying her own little world. It's a relief when she can play by herself, especially when I'm tied up with household chores. Reaching my 30s, I've noticed a waning interest in the wider world, making Yasmin's daily joy frankly enviable. With my husband often away on business trips, he's mostly home only on weekends and holidays. Since I often work weekends too, the days when the whole family is together are rare. However, we're a close-knit family, making the most of our time together, whether we're going on trips or playing locally. Our family relationship is very healthy. Occasionally, my mom, who lives nearby, comes over to visit. Yasmin adores my mom, always exclaiming,
"Grandma! Grandma!"
in excitement. It's heartwarming to see my mom happily respond with a
"Yes."
to Yasmin's calls. For me, busy with work, my mom's presence is invaluable. Compared to Mom, I've always had a strained relationship with my dad. There's no clear reason, but our personalities just don't mesh. We have different perspectives, and it seems we disagree on everything. You encounter such people at work too, but the best strategy is usually to keep your distance. It seems Dad feels the same way, hardly ever showing up at my house. Even when I introduced Michael, Dad opposed our marriage. His reason being,
"Something about him just doesn't sit right. Something about him just doesn't sit right."
Such a selfish reason. To oppose the person your daughter has seriously chosen to be with, just because you don't like something about them, is just too selfish. My already poor relationship with Dad only worsened after he opposed our marriage. But I went ahead and married Michael, ignoring my dad's opposition, because it's my life. Maybe out of a sense of guilt, I found myself avoiding Dad after the wedding. I get along well with Michael's parents, my in-laws, who live far away. When we can take long vacations in summer and winter, I take Michael and Yasmin to visit them. Yasmin has been familiar with them since she was little, so she's not shy at all and is very dear to them. I've always been close to my brother Trevor, who is 5 years older. Our attachment to each other might seem a bit unusual to some. We even exchange emails daily. I share updates about Yasmin's growth and family events, while Trevor vents about work. Whenever something about Yasmin troubles me, talking to Trevor usually helps me forget by the next day. That's how important Trevor is to me. Currently, Trevor, who works for a major corporation, is not only kind and stylish but also handsome. It's a wonder why he doesn't have a girlfriend. Though he's popular, he seems uninterested in romance. His lack of interest in love is, ironically, what draws women to him, something Trevor hasn't realized. Despite everything, we've been living a happy life, supported by a loving family. Then one day, I got a phone call.
"Hello? Trinity? It's me."
The caller, unusually, was Trevor. Maybe it was just my imagination, but Trevor's voice seemed unusually lively.
"I've got a fiancé."
My intuition was right.
"No way. Congratulations." "That's great, Trevor."
I was as happy for my beloved Trevor as if the good news were my own. A smile naturally spread across my face.
"Trevor, you're so cool but never seemed interested in love. You finally met the right person." I'm so happy for you. So, who is she?
When I asked, Trevor said a bit shyly.
She's someone you'd get along with, really kind. I'll introduce her when you come to our parents' house in 3 months.
In 3 months, got it. Let me know when it's closer, and I'll take time off work. And with one more.
Congratulations.
I ended the call with Trevor. Even after hanging up, my excitement didn't fade. My beloved Trevor was getting married. I wondered what his partner was like, hoping we'd get along well. Filled with anticipation, I looked forward to the 3 months until Trevor's visit. Then, one day, on the way back from picking up my daughter Yasmin from the childcare center, she suddenly said,
Mom, I want to have a doggy. A doggy? You mean a dog? What brought this on all of a sudden?
Yasmin likes dogs, but has never said she wanted one. Maybe one of Yasmin's friends at the childcare center got a dog and told her about it.
Because Dad called someone a doggy the other day.
Yasmin gave an answer that I wasn't sure made any sense. Michael called someone a doggy? Would he say something like that? Feeling puzzled, I casually asked Yasmin about it. Did Dad really say that to you? Why would he? But Yasmin seemed to have lost interest in dogs already, now talking to a flower blooming nearby.
Hello, Mr. Flower. Hello, Mr. Flower.
Maybe it's not something to worry about too much. That's what I thought, but even after we got home, took a shower with Yasmin, and ate dinner, the doggy Michael mentioned wouldn't leave my mind. After Michael got home and Yasmin was put to bed, I decided to ask him directly. Hey, this might sound like a weird question, but what's this doggy thing about? Michael seemed momentarily flustered by my question, then said with a bit of panic.
Oh. I went to a pet shop for work recently and saw some puppies. It made me think how nice it would be to have a dog. You know, they say kids grow up kinder with pets around.
So, the doggy Michael mentioned was about a puppy he saw at the pet shop. He must have talked to Yasmin about the puppies.
Oh, so that's what it was. I was curious because it's not like you to talk about wanting a dog.
Hearing the answer directly from Michael, I felt relieved. It's nothing to worry about, you're overthinking it. Michael said with a laugh, so I decided not to dwell on it any further. 3 months had passed since Trevor's marriage announcement, and the day he was coming home finally arrived. Michael had work and said he would come after it was done, so Yasmin and I headed to my parents' house first. Mom, who seemed happy that Trevor was coming, greeted us with,
Trinity, come in, come in.
Smiling more joyously than usual. Unlike with me, Dad, who gets along well with Trevor, was in a good mood for this occasion. Until Trevor and his fiancée arrived, I helped Mom with cooking. We wanted to welcome Trevor and his fiancée with the best celebration possible. Yasmin was playing with Dad. The table was filled with Trevor's favorite dishes and the favorite foods of Trevor's fiancée, which I had asked about beforehand. Looking at the dishes laid out, I felt a bit of unease. It kind of resembles Michael's favorite dishes. But it must be a coincidence. As I was thinking this, the doorbell rang, and Trevor and his fiancée appeared. Michael hadn't finished work yet and wasn't there, but we started the meet and greet with just the family. Trevor's fiancée is apparently named Riley. I could hear Mom from the entrance. Welcome, Riley. Mom greeted them, and the two stepped into the living room where Dad, Yasmin, and I were. At that moment, a voice came from beside me. Not a blessing, but an unexpected remark.
Ah. Look, it's the bitch.
Pointing at Riley, the voice was Yasmin's, who continued pointing while laughing. Riley, with her beautiful face, looked puzzled at Yasmin.
Yasmin. That's rude to our guest.
I scolded her, and Yasmin made a sullen face and said,
"Because Dad called her that. And Big Sis looked so happy about it. Why is it okay for Dad to say it, but not me? I was just playing with Dad when Mom wasn't around."
Yasmin's baffling statement had me, Mom, Dad, and Trevor all scratching our heads. Just then, the doorbell rang, and Michael, having finished work, arrived. I went to welcome Michael, who then entered the living room. And that's when things took a sudden turn.
"Cheater!"
A voice suddenly erupted. Looking towards the source, it was Michael, his face red with anger, yelling at Trevor's fiancée, Riley.
"Why are you here? What's the meaning of this? Is this some kind of harassment?"
Michael was uncontrollably furious. His unusual behavior puzzled everyone else. Michael seemed to not even notice me, our parents, or Yasmin. Then, Riley, Trevor's fiancée, started raising her voice. Gone was her gentle demeanor, now replaced by a harsh tone, furrowing her brows.
"Why are you here? And why should I be the one blamed? You were the one who came on to me. I was never serious about you."
Riley was infuriated, blood rushing to her head. Although initially shocked, I began to understand the nature of their conversation was about an affair.
"You're the one who said you wanted me to come over on holidays. I went out of my way for you, and this is how it ends. Give me back my weekends."
Michael and Riley had been having an affair. And it seems they were using the weekends when I wasn't around for their escapades. They apparently enjoyed treating each other like pets frequently. Yasmin must have seen this. That's why she started talking about Doggy in such a strange way. The reason the prepared food resembled Michael's favorites makes sense now. They must have been dining out together often. All the pieces of unease clicked together in my mind. Realizing the truth, I immediately took Yasmin's hand and left the living room. I couldn't let Yasmin hear any of this. Whatever happens with Michael can be dealt with later, but Yasmin must be protected at all costs. Then Mom appeared and gently placed her hand on me. "I'll stay with Yasmin." It was her way of telling me to go back. I nodded and headed back to the living room. Inside, the heated argument between Michael and Riley continued. The conversation revolved mainly around their affair. It was too much for me to bear, feeling dizzy just listening to them.
"Wait, just a minute."
Finding a moment to interrupt their exchange was impossible. Their back and forth was intense and unrelenting. After several minutes, their argument finally began to subside. As they became aware of us around them, both crumbled to their knees, faces turning pale. "Michael, what is this? Explain yourself." The moment I began to confront Michael, he collapsed backward with a groan.
"Enough. You are no longer family or anything to me. Get out now. Don't you dare touch my daughter."
It was Dad who struck Michael.
"You two, don't ever come back."
Dad said this to Riley, then, with Riley and Michael unable to move, he pulled them by the arms and threw them out of the front door. And with one last remark, he spat out, "You two deserve the worst." In a setting meant for marriage introductions, Michael and Riley were thrown out for their affair being exposed. Afterward, I demanded a divorce and compensation from Michael in court. Ignoring Michael's futile pleas of, "Let's talk it over," I proceeded with the divorce.
"It's too late to talk things over now. If you hadn't done anything in the first place, we wouldn't be in this situation."
That was the last thing I said to Michael. Trevor, of course, called off his engagement with Riley.
"We're never going to see each other again. Don't contact me."
Riley, in tears, pleaded with Trevor to reconsider the broken engagement.
"Please. I won't see that man again. Just give me one more chance.
But Trevor, like me, dismissed Riley.
People who do such things once will do them again.
He then demanded compensation for the broken engagement from Riley. After the divorce, rumors of Michael's affair quickly spread throughout his company and to his clients, eroding the trust he had slowly built up. He was transferred to a department with no work to do, leading a life devoid of excitement. Riley, having quit her job in anticipation of marrying Trevor, found herself in debt due to the compensation payments. She ended up juggling multiple part-time jobs, working tirelessly every day without a break. Riley's dream of an easy life through marriage to Trevor turned into a nightmare of the exact opposite. Her ideal wedding plans were shattered overnight. It's true what they say, wrongdoing doesn't pay. Having closed the chapter on Michael, I returned home with Yasmin. Mom looked at me, slightly worn out, and asked with concern, "Trinity, are you okay?"
Mom, I'm fine. It's good that Yasmin found out before she got any older. Some of it might stick in her memory, though.
Then, to Dad, who was reading the newspaper in the living room. Dad, who had struck Michael at that moment. I could never have been as decisive.
Dad, thank you for what you did with Michael. You were right. I was swept up in the moment thinking he was the one, but I should have been more discerning in judging people.
When I apologized to Dad, he looked up from his newspaper and said to me, "Trinity, I'm sorry. I should have been more assertive in stopping you. I thought it would make you unhappy, but I didn't have a clear reason. Just not liking someone isn't enough for you to be convinced, right? Maybe I was just convinced that Dad and I didn't get along, that we weren't close.
It's not your fault, Dad. I've learned a lot from this experience."
Laughing together, Dad and I looked at each other as if to say, what was all that past conflict about? That's just how family relationships are, it seems. Misunderstanding each other for no reason, and before you know it, making up. I hope Yasmin and I can build that kind of relationship from now on. As for Trevor, he was shocked by Riley's affair and insisted he didn't want a girlfriend for a while.
I'm done with that kind of pain. To think that the person I was about to marry was having an affair with my sister's husband.
After living as a bachelor for some time, nursing his wounds, Trevor finally began to move on from Riley. He eventually married someone from a company he was dealing with. Trevor's new wife, a beautiful and wonderful woman, was truly deserving to walk by his side.
Can I tell Uncle? Really?
My 7-year-old niece said this as she alternated her gaze between my son and my husband. My son is about to turn 3, but he still can't speak. My niece, talking as if she's having a conversation with my son, looked up at my husband with a worried expression.
Uncle, you see.
My name is Melanie. I work at a staffing agency, and my husband, Timothy, works at the same company. Timothy and I met as colleagues at the company, and since we were close in age, we started dating through work consultations and eventually got married. Then, I became pregnant with our son, Hunter, and took maternity leave and parental leave. When Hunter turned 1, we looked for a childcare center to enroll him in, and I went back to work as planned, originally intending to return immediately. While sending our child to the childcare center, I worked to get back into the pace of work, and with Timothy's help, we managed to get through the busy days of work and childcare without any spare time. When we absolutely couldn't manage, or when Hunter got sick and had to leave the childcare center early, Madison, my mother-in-law who lives nearby, would often pick him up from the childcare center or watch over Hunter while I did household chores. We were very grateful, but Madison gradually started suggesting that we should quit the childcare center. In fact, Hunter was relatively advanced compared to children his age. He began walking just after turning 1, and though not yet conversational, he understood our words and could communicate simply. Madison started treating Hunter like a prodigy, insisting he shouldn't be in a public childcare center but rather receive gifted education under her constant care. This suggestion had us worried. While we were indebted to her, we tried to refuse politely by saying Hunter enjoyed the childcare center, which only made Madison furious. She didn't like that I had returned to work while Hunter was still so young and berated us, saying,
"You don't love Hunter. Leaving him in childcare all day is negligent. Unlike you, I would be willing to stay with him all the time and take care of everything. Just hand Hunter over to me."
I was shocked by Madison's accusation of being a bad mother, but I was even more frightened by her treating Hunter as an object to be handed over. After that, we tried not to rely on Madison, and if Timothy wasn't home when she came over, I pretended to be out. However, Madison started taking actions that couldn't be ignored, like picking up Hunter from childcare without our consent or trying to steal our house keys after bringing over sweets and insisting on coming in. Timothy, too, gave up on reasoning with her after seeing her unreasonableness. We decided to move without telling Madison and began looking for a new place in secret. However, finding a new home proved difficult. We thought it would be easy to find a house in a growing city, but with many people moving in, convenient properties sold quickly. While searching for a house behind Madison's back proved difficult, half a year flew by in no time. By then, Madison's interest in Hunter had waned significantly. Actually, even at a year and a half, Hunter still wasn't speaking at all. He used to babble a lot when he was younger, but lately, he's been completely silent except when crying. Taking him to the hospital worriedly, we found nothing abnormal. We were told that language development varies greatly among children and to keep a careful watch, so we went home carrying our worries. Seeing Hunter like this, Madison did a complete turnaround from treating him as a prodigy, declaring,
"Not speaking much just means he's a disabled child. There must be something wrong with Melanie's body, and that's why she gave birth to a strange child. I don't know why Timothy ever married someone like her."
And she labeled it as a disease. Despite the doctor's diagnosis, being told Hunter was sick and that I was abnormal brought me to tears. Madison hadn't been coming to our house recently, but when she did, it was unbearable how she could say such awful things, leaving me completely distraught. Then, Timothy got angrier than I've ever seen, declared we were cutting ties with Madison, and forcefully kicked her out of the house. After blocking Madison's contacts, we began to ignore her completely, even if she came to the house. Knowing Timothy's firm stance, Madison shouted,
"I don't need a wife or grandson with disabilities,"
and never returned to our house again. Since then, we have been living peacefully as a family of 3, and before we knew it, Hunter turned 3, yet he still hadn't spoken a word. Considering it unusual for him not to speak by this point, we were advised at a public health screening to have Hunter examined at a major hospital. When Hunter and I went to the hospital recommended to us, we unexpectedly ran into my sister Yasmin and my niece Rose, who were there for vaccinations. Yasmin and Rose live far away, and because we had been busy, it had been difficult to meet, so we were delighted by this long-awaited reunion. Since Yasmin and Rose hadn't met Hunter since his birth, they greeted him for the first time.
"What's your name?" "Hunter? That's cool." Yes, you're in the rabbit class, aren't you?" "Rose loves rabbits too."
Despite not having mentioned Hunter's childcare class to Rose, she naturally continued the conversation as if it was obvious. Surprised, I asked Yasmin, and she said that Rose can understand the language of animals and babies, who can't speak. Half in doubt, yet having witnessed it firsthand, I had no choice but to believe. When the 4 of us went to the hospital cafeteria for lunch, Rose said,
"Does Hunter like hamburgers?" Yes. And he dislikes carrots? But they taste good together with hamburgers. Does Hunter like hamburgers? Yes. And he dislikes carrots? But they taste good together with hamburgers.
Accurately guessing Hunter's likes and dislikes without being told, which left me speechless. Even after seeing the doctor, the reason why Hunter wouldn't speak remained a mystery. There were no issues with his throat or vocal cords. He could cry and laugh, but he wouldn't utter meaningful words like mom or dad. Feeling down about not finding a solution, Timothy came to pick us up from the hospital after his rounds in the evening. Since we were together, we decided to have dinner as a family of 5, moving to a family restaurant near the hospital. While waiting for our order to arrive, Rose looked back and forth between Hunter and Timothy, then stared at Timothy anxiously.
Hunter is asking when he can start talking to Uncle, she said.
Surprised, Timothy looked at me, so I told him about how Rose had correctly guessed things she shouldn't know, like class names and Hunter's likes and dislikes, leaving Timothy to let out a disbelieving sigh.
Hunter really wants to talk to both Uncle and Auntie. But he couldn't because Grandma was always around, and he was afraid of being taken away, Rose conveyed.
The phrase "always around" caught my attention, and I asked Rose for clarification, given that we hadn't been seeing Madison lately. Hunter shook his head and just stared at Rose. Then, as if struck by a brilliant idea, Rose clapped her hands together, smiled joyfully, and reassured Hunter.
Grandma isn't here now, so it's okay to talk.
Hunter looked around uncertainly, then at me and Timothy.
Mom, Dad. Is Grandma really not here?
Hunter's words came out so fluently that Timothy and I were shocked. As Yasmin calmed us down in our near panic, Hunter reached out his arms, asking to be held. Hastily, I lifted him from the child's seat onto my lap, where he grabbed my hands and happily kicked his legs.
When I was a baby, Grandma said she was going to take me home to talk a lot. I didn't talk because I like Dad and Mom's house better.
Hunter had simply chosen not to speak. This must have been around when he was about a year old. Recalling Madison's insistence on gifted education and her wanting to take him home. Furthermore, Hunter expressed his desire to talk to Timothy and me but felt he couldn't.
Because Grandma is always there. Inside Hunter's home, in the car, even at the rabbit class, he said.
I was baffled by how Madison, who didn't live with us, could always be there, even in the car or at the childcare center. Then, remembering the timing of Madison's visits. On days we hadn't told her about hospital visits or when we received notifications about language training, Madison invariably showed up. Whispering my dreadful suspicion to Timothy, he looked at Hunter in dismay. Can you tell where Grandma is in the house? Timothy's soft question led Hunter to list several locations. Hearing his responses, Timothy's face turned red, and he trembled with emotion. Apologizing to Hunter for not noticing, we thanked Yasmin and Rose for their help before rushing home to confirm our bad hunch and take necessary actions. Once home, we asked Hunter again where Madison could be. Pointing with his little hands, Hunter showed us various places. Under the entrance shoe cabinet, behind the living room sofa, on the top shelf of the kitchen cabinet, and when a device was found under the bedroom bed, I felt dizzy.
When Grandma came to pick me up, she left it behind. Grandma has always been in the house.
Hunter explained, indicating that what seemed to be bugging devices had been left throughout our home, making it feel as though Madison was perpetually present. Discovering such devices within our home, similar to those seen on TV, and confirming their nature as surveillance devices available in abundance online was unsettling. Before the police arrived, Madison showed up at our house, having apparently been listening in on us as we searched for the bugs. Timothy couldn't hold back his fury, confronting Madison.
Mom, What do you think you're doing, planting bugs in our house like it's nothing? This is outrageous, creepy, and a serious crime. It's because Timothy ignored my contacts, isn't it? What's so wrong with wanting to know more about one's own family? We're family, after all. There's no need to make such a big fuss about this. More importantly, Hunter can speak. To think he can talk so much at 3, he must be gifted. Just as I thought, a real prodigy. I'll take him and provide him with gifted education so he can work at a big company in the future. And eventually, he can take care of me in my old age. Now I can rest easy.
Madison showed no remorse for planting the listening devices, dismissing it as nothing significant. Her blatant disregard for Hunter's wishes and her self-centered assertions made us feel sick. Just as we were considering our next steps, the police arrived. After we explained the situation and the police confirmed with Madison herself, who didn't think she had done anything wrong, she readily admitted to planting the devices and was promptly taken into custody. Despite her resistance and insistence on her innocence, revealing the locations of the devices led to her being packed into a police car and taken to the station. Following Madison's confession, a specialist recommended by the police found numerous listening devices in our home and car. The realization that we hadn't noticed such extensive surveillance was embarrassing. The thought of Madison having heard all our conversations made us dizzy. In the end, Madison was arrested for burglary and criminal mischief, showing no signs of remorse for her excessive actions, even though it was her son and DIL's home. Furthermore, during the interrogation, Madison confessed to also planting listening devices at the child care center. Just as Hunter had said, she had bugged the class he attended. She had paid a staff member, who was a friend, to install them. An investigation at the child care center indeed found several devices. The staff member who assisted Madison faced serious legal consequences and disciplinary action. Timothy was deeply affected by his mother's disturbing behavior. But most importantly, for Hunter and me, we decided to move away from this town filled with unpleasant memories as quickly as possible while Madison was preoccupied with police proceedings, seeking a peaceful life. Considering our job situations, we decided to move near Yasmin's family. Upon explaining our circumstances, Yasmin's family was shocked but understanding, offering their sympathy and saying, "You've been through a lot, well done." With Yasmin's family helping with the move, everything went smoothly. Since then, despite it being her first offense, Madison received a prison sentence due to the malicious, cunning nature of her actions, which were premeditated and carried out with clear intent. Despite Madison's full confession, she seemed unable to comprehend why her attempts to learn more about her family were met with such serious consequences, ranting and causing a scene at the police station, claiming,
"Let me out of here! I was just trying to get to know my family better. I've done nothing wrong."
When we were informed by the new residents of our old home about a letter filled with grievances and demands for release that Madison sent, it was a stark reminder of how fortunate we were to have moved to a place beyond her reach, and the thought of what could have happened if Hunter had been taken by her sent shivers down our spine. Now, free from Madison's watchful eyes and with Hunter able to speak without any reservations, our family enjoys brighter and more communicative days together. Hunter's verbal skills are impressively advanced for a 3-year-old, leading us to wonder if he might indeed be what Madison claimed, a gifted child. However, this does not justify Madison's actions, nor does it mean we are willing to forgive her. Living closer to Yasmin's family has enriched our lives with increased interactions, and Yasmin has been a great help with tasks like picking Hunter up from childcare, which Madison used to handle. Our weekends are now filled with joyous outings to amusement parks, zoos, and trips planned together, fostering a close and supportive relationship. Reflecting on the hardships Hunter endured, We are determined to compensate for the past by ensuring he grows up in an environment where he can freely express himself without restraint, committed to never letting him feel suppressed again.
The idea of caring for an old woman or dealing with high school kids, what a nuisance. There's no room for a baby here, right? You should leave.
I was a teenager, jerked around by my selfish brother and his wife. But, in an unexpected turn, my life changed for the better. My name is Riley. Lately, at 40, it seems like gravity's winning the battle, my cheeks sagging into a slight bulldog look. Oh dear. Is it hard to be against aging? However, reminds me, my mother never really had sagging skin or wrinkles. Wish I had inherited that. I think she was quite beautiful. After divorcing my father over his affair when I was young, she raised my older brother Alexander and me on her own, until one day. Suddenly, she collapsed with a brain disease. Alexander was a freshman in high school, and I was in middle school. My mother woke up, but was paralyzed from the waist down and struggled to speak. She mostly seemed lost in a daze. That's when my trials began. After learning about her condition, what are we going to do now? Alexander quickly said, I thought, we'll support her together. But, Alexander said, I can't handle caregiving. Mom wouldn't want a man taking care of her, right? I have to study, so you handle it all. And he just dumped it all on me. As a middle schooler, I had no idea how to care for someone. I couldn't even imagine the workload or how hard it would be, just felt anxious about the future. Could I really take care of her all by myself? Not long ago, I was just a kid, spoiled by her. The only adult I could turn to was my father, who had abandoned us, and I didn't even know how to reach him. I learned for the first time that she hadn't even received child support from her husband. Even if I could contact him, he would have probably abandoned us again. Knowing the hardships she faced working day and night pained me. Moreover, she was young and ineligible for care insurance, so we couldn't get proper care services. Though we managed living expenses with welfare, there was hardly any external support. There might have been better systems in place, but as a middle schooler, I couldn't understand the bureaucratic paperwork. I just followed what the hospital advised, processing paperwork as told. Yet, Alexander turned a blind eye to me, leaving not only mother's care but all household chores to me. Living in the same house, he enjoyed leisure, sleeping whenever he wanted, while I gave up studying hard and friendships, often sleepless due to caring for my mother. Thus, my teenage years dedicated to household chores and caring for her, I was thrust upon me by Alexander. It happened the year after my mother fell ill. Suddenly, I'm dropping out of high school, Alexander announced. I couldn't help but hope he might assist with the mother's care. I was in my second year of middle school, needed study harder. I needed help. But what he said next was unbelievable. Got a girl pregnant. I'm marrying her and we'll live here. What? Turns out, he had impregnated a classmate, dropping out to raise the child in our home. A person who wouldn't even care for his own mother, how could he care for a baby? A child making a child, that's what it seemed like. I protested loudly. I don't want to live with you. But, don't worry, I won't bother you. He just laughed it off with a nonchalant attitude. Of course, I couldn't believe those words. For the first time, I wanted to escape. But back then, I was powerless. A month later, Alexander's girlfriend, Stella, moved in. At first, I know it's tough at home. I'll help. She was saying nice things to me, but as expected, within 3 days, I can't strain myself because of the baby. She had me fetching even a cup of coffee. It's no surprise, considering she chose to be Alexander's wife. The high school dropouts stayed home mostly, doing nothing for my mother. When I rushed home to care for her, "What's for dinner?" That's how they would ask me. Moreover, at night, they'd make noise, robbing me of my precious sleep. It's no wonder I lost 10 pounds after Stella arrived. Eventually, Alexander started working part-time at a grocery store, reducing their late-night disturbances, but then Stella's baby was born. Now, it was the baby's cries all night. Honestly, even being told she was my niece, I couldn't find her cute, given my feelings towards Alexander and Stella. I might sound cold, but back then, I was struggling with my studies, trying not to take out my frustration on my mother. I was still a child, with no capacity to adore Alexander's child. Despite being on the edge, I managed to get into high school, thanks to my teacher's extra help. Not the school I wanted, but the closest one with lower standards though. Not ideal, but better than not going at all. The money saved from Alexander dropping out of high school was used for my tuition. Maybe that's one thing to thank him for. I believed things would get easier once I started high school. That's what I hoped. Then, right before starting high school, one day,
"Hey, Riley, how about this place?"
"Huh?" Stella showed me a pamphlet for a condominium. I thought for a moment they were moving out now that they had a child. However, it was all for single living.
"This one's close to a grocery store, good for a girl like you, near a busy street, safer." "Stella, I don't plan on moving."
"Huh?" She asked back with a smile, but her eyes weren't laughing. I felt pressured, as if I had no choice. But, okay, I understand. I couldn't just say,
"We should consider my mother."
"Just take her with you."
"That's impossible. I have nowhere to go."
"I'm helping you look for a place. Just find a part-time job or something."
"That's terrible."
"Terrible? You're in high school now, perfectly able to work. Living at home is just pampering yourself, pampering. You're in high school, time to move out."
"Why do I have to listen to you?"
I argued back, tears in my eyes.
"I am Alexander's wife. I'm his family. I've got a baby, but I've got an old woman to care for and a high schooler at the same time. How could you deal with harsh situation? Get out quickly."
Before I knew it, Stella grabbed my collar and threw me out. Then Alexander roughly dragged my mother out, here, handing her to me. I couldn't believe these were the actions of parents. Stella then kicked my mother's wheelchair and threw my school bag at me.
"See ya,"
and closed the door.
"Wait! Please wait!"
I yelled, banging on the door, but they didn't come out. I was really being thrown out. That's when I realized.
"What's the matter, young lady?"
The voice came from Harris, the old man living across the street.
"Mr. Harris."
He asked what happened. "I've been thrown out with my disabled mother." But I couldn't said. It felt embarrassing, somehow shameful. "Come on in for some coffee." He then gestured for me to come over with a smile. Though I was hesitant to enter a neighbor's home so quickly, it started raining, and I couldn't leave my mother out, so I gratefully accepted. Harris gave us towels and warm coffee. Noticing my tension, he made small talk, asking about my favorite things to help me relax. Eventually,
"I was kicked out by Alexander and his wife."
I opened up. "What will you do now? Do you have somewhere to go?"
"I don't know."
"How about I offer you a place to live?"
"No, we can't. We don't have the money." "Oh my. I wouldn't take money from a young lady like you. It's for free." "That can't be right." "It's okay. Usually, old folks have extra money, and young people should take advantage when they can. I'll even cover your tuition. We can hire someone to care for your mother." "What would you do for us?" "Don't you remember?" "Remember what?" "I used to be the janitor at your elementary school." "I'm sorry, I don't remember." "No wonder. You were only in 2nd grade, and I didn't have gray hair then. You found me behind the school suffering from chest pain and called for help."
Now that he mentioned it, I vaguely remembered.
"After that, I quit and moved here and realized you were my neighbor." "But just for that, you can't possibly owe me this much." "No, you see, if you hadn't found me quickly, I could have ended up like your mother. I'm really grateful."
I couldn't believe it, but Mr. Harris's eyes weren't deceitful like Alexander's. He genuinely seemed to care about us.
"You might be wary of a stranger offering you a home. So how about living with my granddaughter?" She's in college and studying to be a caregiver. She could help.
That sounded reassuring. I didn't want to live with anyone like Alexander again. It was a tough decision, but honestly, I had no other choice. I decided to trust Harris and accept his offer. The house he provided was a mansion, the likes of which I'd never seen, and it was wheelchair accessible. His granddaughter, Scarlett, said, "I was planning to live alone for college but thought it might be lonely." She happily agreed to live with us and even shared the caregiving and household chores. I couldn't help but think, have I come to heaven? It was such a blissful life. Not only did Harris make it possible for me to attend high school, but he also offered to pay for my college, allowing me to pursue an education I thought was impossible. Scarlett was truly like a sister to me, supporting me through my studies. She helped me study for college because I hardly could have attended the high school class. Thanks to her, I was accepted into a university with much higher standards. Later, I learned Harris was from a family that owned a large corporation, involved in everything from food to caregiving services. He had been a janitor as a post-retirement hobby. One day, "How can I repay you?" I asked him. Then,
"Why don't you work at one of our caregiving companies?"
he suggested. It didn't feel like repaying him, but he said,
"Seeing you work hard would be the best repayment for me."
So, I accepted the job at his company. Thanks to my job, I was able to earn enough to afford outside care for my mother and live in a wheelchair-friendly house. Furthermore, Harris said,
"I want you to meet my grandson, Lucas."
He introduced me to Lucas, who was set to eventually take over the caregiving business I worked at. Initially, I hadn't planned on it, but I was drawn to him, a year older than me, and his inclusive nature. We started dating and eventually married. Harris confessed,
"I had planned for you two to get together from the start."
He said that. When we announced our marriage,
"Now we're truly family,"
he said with a twinkle in his eye, though I was not fortunate with my real family, aside from my mother. I remember being happy to have found a family in that way. My understanding husband agreed to live with my mother. My in-laws were very kind, and we were blessed with 2 children, leading a peaceful life until one day.
"Riley, isn't this your brother?"
What? Lucas handed me a resume, and there he was, aged but unmistakably Alexander.
"It is Alexander. He's applied for a caregiving position at one of our homes. He's got an interview next week, among other candidates."
Caregiving. He would never do that.
"I wonder how he ended up applying here."
I don't know. Hey, what if I conduct the interview? He grinned at my suggestion.
"That's a great idea."
He said that. On the day of the interview, Alexander appeared in a suit, but his shirt was wrinkled and untucked. He didn't look like someone ready to work.
"Please, take a seat."
He complied, and our eyes met for a moment.
"Riley! Long time no see."
I smiled, speaking to my startled brother. "Why are you here?"
"I'm the interviewer." "Why are you here?" "I thought you despised caregiving."
"I love caring for the elderly, you know."
"Lies. After what you did to my mother and me."
"I was young."
"Please, Riley!"
He whispered, but then suddenly shouted to beg.
"What's all about?" "I've got no other choice. Please hire me."
"What do you mean?" He exploded with emotion.
"I've been unemployed since my part-time factory job in my 30s. Stella says she can't support someone who only eats and does nothing. She started despising me when our child began daycare. I think she's seeing someone else. But she's all I have. If I don't get a job, she'll leave me for good."
Alexander, a grown man, broke down and cried right there, seemingly seeking pity. I won't let him forget what he did to us.
"That's all?"
Surprised by my response, he said,
"How can you be so cold after hearing my misfortune?" "I was just a student when you and your family threw me out. I managed with minimal welfare while taking care of you all." "That's different." "Maybe you were fired because you're the kind of person who easily abandons family. Perhaps you lacked something essential for the job.
Silenced by my words, he just trembled.
Did you ever help with the kids or housework? Or were you just lazing around?
He seemed shocked, probably because I hit the nail on the head.
No wonder you're not treated like a human. You're like a walrus, just eating and lying around. Walruses are cute, but a husband like that is just annoying. Stella probably didn't find another man, she just grew to dislike you. And I can see why from this conversation.
He had nothing to say, just shaking.
Sorry, but a company can't hire someone who'd kick out your own mother and sister. We're not that desperate.
What?
You're not getting it? You're not hired. No one with 15 job changes like yours could be natural.
His resume showed short stints at each job. Likely due to being fired. He's always been self-centered, unfit for teamwork or considerate work. Indeed, even during this interview, his selfishness was evident.
I mean, I only have caregiving jobs left. Thought so. Don't worry, I'll spread the word in our affiliates not to hire you.
With a smile, I said,
Please! Do not such a thing!
And Alexander apologized again.
That's non-negotiable for the elderly's safety. And, actually, I'm not really an interviewer. The real interviews ended long ago, and we've already chosen someone. You were never going to be hired. I just gave you a fake schedule. So, no matter what, you won't be hired. Sorry about that.
I grabbed his collar and threw him out like he once did to me.
Goodbye.
And with a smile, I waved goodbye. He tried to re-enter the room, but Luca's subordinate, who was standing by outside, threatened,
If you make any more noise, I'll call the police.
And they escorted him out of the building. That was the last battle with Alexander. Afterward, he sent a letter to my company. He couldn't find work and was divorced by Stella. The letter begged for help and a job. Typical of his self-centeredness. I ignored it. He doesn't deserve help after trampling on my mother and me. I hope he learns from being on the receiving end of hardship. Meanwhile, I continue to live a peaceful life. All thanks to Harris, who took in my mother and me. He is aging, his legs growing weaker, but I still visit him regularly. My middle school children also adore him, often visiting him on their own without my knowledge. This spring, we took my mother and Harris for a picnic at a nearby lake. We're planning a summer trip. Next year, and the year after, I want to create many more wonderful memories, making up for my difficult childhood. Despite those hardships, I'm glad to have been born. I'm grateful for meeting those people. I am happy now.